everybody. Welcome to Fascia Freedom Fighters. This is Brooke, and I'm very excited to be talking today with Dr. Aimee Shunney. Aimee is a naturopathic doctor. You're based out of Santa Cruz and Campbell, California?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she has also created the 28-day cleanse called Cleanse Organic, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
a whole foods cleanse that you put together with a chef that's tasty too.
That's right.
And it's an anti-inflammatory
Mm-hmm.
cleanse, which is really relevant to what we're talking to today. So welcome,
Thank
first of
you.
all. And I wanted to chat with you because in my practice, but also obviously on Fascia Freedom Fighters, I'm talking a lot with people who are dealing with chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's really linear, tangible stuff like I had a car accident, I shattered my kneecap, I have knee problems. But oftentimes it's not that. Chronic pain can be mysterious and require a lot of detective work. And I do not have a background in nutrition or naturopathic medicine or anything like that, but I have certainly seen over my years in practice what an enormous impact food makes on people's pain. And I did an interview with one of your patients, which will be going up on the site around the same time as this interview for those who listening to the interview who want to listen to it, with one of your patients who had had a profound experience with severe pain that finally got better when he stopped eating gluten.
I know it's outrageous. I mean, this man, Kurt. I mean, what he had been through in the years of his life and the amount of financial and emotional investment that he had made, and to the point where when he came to see me, I actually thought to myself, "What on earth am I going to be able to do for this person?" Because he's
Yeah,
been to every specialist. What can little old me do?
yeah,
So I just went back to the basics, and it was profound for him.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing. And I wanted to tell you, I don't think I've told you this yet, but shortly after you sent Kurt my way and I interviewed him for the site, a colleague of mine sent me another story about a person who had really, really severe migraines.
Mm-hmm.
And their grandfather had had the same severe migraine pattern. And their grandfather had had brain surgery to remove the portion of the brain where the migraines were occurring. So this person, this younger person, was determined, I'm not, nobody would do that today anyway, I hope. I don't think.
I
But they
don't know.
go down this really invasive route, and they did an elimination diet. It was gluten for them too. It's crazy. I'm just like, oh my God. So it's not always gluten, but I wanted to talk with you about your experience. I mean, you specialize in working in women's health and family medicine, so you're not always working with chronic pain, but obviously you're going to see plenty of that because we're living in a culture that is just riddled with it.
Sure.
So what do you think the connection is between pain and food, sort of painting in broad strokes to start?
Well, I think that if you are unwittingly eating something that you might even think is healthy for you, and you're eating it every day, and your body's having an immune response to it, which may, if you're a healthy, vital organism, your body may compensate for years and years and years, but
Mm,
you're having this chronic inflammatory hit every day. And then you couple that with, getting older, different stresses, maybe you have an accident, some other disease state comes up, the body can't compensate anymore. And all of that inflammation kind of adds up into this perfect storm, and you start to exhibit some type of symptom. So for me, I think it has to be related to that immune inflammatory connection. And it's hard to tell with food. I mean, I think most people think about the type of immediate response food allergy that our allergists test us for, either with the scratch test on the back, sometimes a blood test. That's one type of allergy. There's delayed response allergies that take up to 3 days to show up. And there's food sensitivities that we really don't understand terribly well. Food intolerances where we don't break something down well. All of these things, which you don't get that quick immediate response when you eat something and then boom. So it becomes very hard to correlate it with your food, and you just start to think, well, this is my normal state. I'm in pain, or I'm bloated and irritated. Whatever it is, you
yeah,
just start to think it's your normal.
right. And
Yeah.
are there sort of typical foods that you see are the most common
Yeah.
agitators?
Yeah, so for me, there's a big five. So there's dairy, there's gluten, corn, soy, and eggs. I think those five foods are foods that most of us are getting over the course of the day, unless we are really actively trying to avoid them because they're in everything.
Yeah.
So if you eat anything that's in a package or a box or is prepared or anything, it has some of that stuff. People will say to me, well, I don't eat any soy. I don't make tofu. I might have soy sauce every once in a while, but they don't realize that they're getting soy multiple times every day because it's in everything.
Yeah.
So to me, those are the big five. And then, I always am looking at sugar
Sure.
and caffeine and alcohol because I feel like when those three things are consumed too much, and even for some people only consume just a little, it can be problematic as well. So I tend to kind of wrap the big five in with, it ends up being a cleanse, which is kind of how my program was born, because it was like, all right, you're removing these five foods anyway. We might as well pull sugar and caffeine and alcohol
Yeah.
and see what we get. We might as well. And that really launches the body into a cleanse. So, then you go down that route too. But so those are the things that I usually look at to start. And sure, I will occasionally find people that have a food sensitivity to bananas or almonds. But the vast majority of people, what we're talking about is a kind of a body burden issue, a body that's trying to compensate from all kinds of different stressors. And you pull those foods out that I mentioned, and the vast majority of people see a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. And what kinds of differences do people notice? Like, what are some stories besides Kurt's like amazing story, which will be on the site, that people start to pick up on?
Yeah, well, and musculoskeletal pain is definitely, for me at this stage of my career with my experience, I feel extremely confident saying to people if they're in pain that they should do an elimination and challenge diet.
Yeah.
Because really, what I've seen over the years, I mean, Kurt is next to miraculous, but that being said, I've heard so many amazing stories about people no longer needing to take painkillers, people who couldn't do this with their hand, being able to do this after 3 weeks. So and that's such a direct line to inflammation, right? I mean, we kind of get the pain and inflammation line. But beyond that, I mean, I see people just, their energy, they're sleeping better than they ever have. It restores their digestion so that they're having normal bowel movements again. It gets rid of headaches. It helps with mood instability. And then, of course, from a more objective perspective, I see people's cholesterol levels come down because they're changing the way that they eat and their blood sugar balances. So it is one of these lovely little pearls that I get to use in my practice because it's so simple, but it takes care of so much.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a woman, I won't use her name because I don't have permission to, but she's a really high level, very well known osteopath, who does manual medicine. And so she's working on people in physical pain with her hands in their tissue all the time. And she is in very high demand because she's quite well known. She has a rule, I heard from one of her students, no patient, she will not work with any patient if they eat, if they're not eating an anti-inflammatory diet.
Well,
Because it's such a dramatic change in the
well, and
results.
I'm sure yeah, and I'm sure as a body worker that you can feel it in their tissue. So
Yeah.
like when somebody stops sugar, like particularly if somebody's really a sugar addict, right? It changes their tissue, right? I mean, it goes from being way more tense,
Yeah.
to you can actually like get in there and move stuff around. I mean, you can feel it in a tactile way in the tissue.
Yeah. I mean, I had a client come to me recently who I've been working with rather frequently because she just had her second hip replacement at a young age because of a congenital issue. So I know her tissue really well because we've been working together for a long time. And she came in and I was like, I mean, you were healing up so well. And all of a sudden, like you are systemically inflamed and I cannot, it's just like I'm knocking on the door of the tissue and I'm trying to get someone to answer the door and nobody's home. And I was like, what's going on food wise? And she was like, oh my God, I've been on such a sugar binge. I'm eating so much sugar. And, I just feel like it's irresponsible to not bring this issue up about the connection between food and pain because a lot of times people don't make the connection. They don't realize how directly it affects their tissue. And
Absolutely.
sure enough, she cut the sugar out, came back, and totally different body.
It's amazing. And I think for a lot of people, particularly with sugar, and Kurt, he was gluten and sugar.
Yes.
I think that sugar is really profound. I think we're just beginning to understand how it really reacts in the body. A study came out recently, just in the last month or so, in the Journal of Nutrition, that showed that, you know, sugar and refined carbohydrates, these kinds of things. I mean, the what they do in the body, what they do to the blood sugar is just, it's so profound. I mean, these are things that from the world of holistic nutrition, it's like, you know, duh. But from a conventional medical model, they're just kind of catching up with the fact that these things cause inflammation. They promote obesity. They promote chronic disease.
Yeah.
And part of the way that they do that is because of their effect on inflammatory markers in the body. And with sugar, so part of this study, what I was getting to was, it was this concept of really thinking about these foods as addictive substances. And I was doing this radio show. I was doing a radio show where the host actually got out the DSM-5 and was reading the criteria for addiction, which, well, you know, like to heroin or cocaine or something like that. And if I listen to those criteria and think about my patients who come in complaining about sugar addiction, they fit right in. I mean, they fit right into the criteria. So people who have it, right? And so, you know, that to really stop with sugar, you have to pull it.
Yeah.
You have to eliminate it, right? And that first week is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But then you really change. I mean, after a week, it's not just in your tissue, right? I mean, you start to, the cravings start to go away, and your whole chemistry starts to change. It's just it's kind of an obvious experience for a lot of people.
Yeah. And your taste buds change. You know, when you reintroduce sugar, even something like I usually eat low sugar fruits when I'm off sugar, like, you know, green apples and berries. But if I introduce something like a really fresh summer peach, it's just like this weird flavor. It's delicious, but weird. But if I introduce something false, like a Hershey bar or an Oreo cookie, it's weird.
Yeah, it resets your taste buds for sure. In the Cleanse Organic program, you know, for years we had people take out refined sugar, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, of course. But then what we were finding is that what people were doing, where they were like subsisting on agave and honey, you know, xylitol flavored cookies. So what we ended up doing was actually taking out all the natural sweeteners too.
Yeah.
Because the idea was, give your body a chance to reset your taste buds and to see how you feel, because we rely on sweet so much, and so much of those sweeteners are sweeter than sugar.
Yeah.
You know, so
it keeps that cycle going where you always want the hit of sweet.
So you got to get off that whole cycle, and I found that to be much more effective for people and more profound in their results as far as relieving their pain or whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish by eliminating and challenging foods.
Now, I wish I could quote the study, but I can't. I don't know which one it was, but it was basically somebody who was looking at traditional cultures, people who were still living in very traditional way, hunter-gatherer type ways, and that as white flour and white sugar was introduced into these cultures, that you could watch diseases of contemporary culture just come online. Suddenly there was diabetes and heart disease and cancer and autoimmune disorders and all the stuff that had never existed before. So there's clearly, you know, this white flour, white sugar thing is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Just in general, it's not what humans are meant to be doing. But beyond that, you feel like, because I have people ask me all the time, I'm in the process of being diagnosed with celiac. It's looking like I'm probably actually have celiac and not just gluten intolerant. Mm-hmm. So when I say that to people, they're like, why does everyone have celiac now? Or why is everyone at least gluten intolerant now? What's different? So part of it is just, it's not good for us in terms of watching what happened with traditional cultures. But you also have an opinion about, like, what's changed that now suddenly so many people have these autoimmune conditions, or at least sensitivities.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think there's multiple factors, like you're saying. I mean, one, of course, being that it's not good for us, and we ingest so much of it. Yeah. Because, of course, we also, many of us, eat animal products, and animals are being fed it, and a lot of the animals aren't meant to digest it. So what we're getting is something that is who knows what the remnant is. And then, of course, there's the genetically modified component. Is the grain even the same grain that our ancestors used to get? And, so for me, the way I think about it is that it's got to be some cross between an alteration in the actual proteins in the food based on genetic modification, plus just the sheer quantity of how much we're getting. And then throw that on top of the standard American diet and the standard American lifestyle, which puts us under so much stress and duress and depletes us nutritionally and makes it that much harder for our body to compensate. For me, I feel like it's got to be some confluence of all of those things that makes everybody so seemingly so affected. And, for me, certainly there's a group of people that have celiac, and there's a group of people that have gluten intolerance. But I think for a lot of people, it's just simply that they're at threshold. Like their body is managing everything your body can. So it's like, you go back to that shopping cart theory, right? Where like everybody comes into the world with their own shopping cart. Some of us have more already in our cart than others. And then over the course of our life, where other things are going into the cart until we kind of hit threshold. And then whatever else goes in, doesn't matter. The cart's going to tip. So you got to go back. What can you take out of the cart? Which of course is a beautiful place for food to come in because we actually have some control. You pull something like gluten, which we eat so much of and is genetically modified for a lot of what folks are getting, all that, and they get a tremendous amount of relief. Whether it's actually that they have an allergy or an intolerance to gluten, I don't know, or are they just lowering the threshold on the shopping cart and creating some more space for their body to manage everything it needs to manage again. So I kind of think it might be some of that too.
Sure. And for people who are watching at home and are in pain, I just want to say to them before I ask you what they can do for themselves, that for me, an enormous part, I grew up with chronic pain, and as an adult, if I eat gluten, I basically get rheumatoid arthritis in my hands, and I use my hands for work. It's not a small deal, the amount of pain I get into if I eat gluten. So it can, and we're talking about Kurt and other people you've seen, it can be a big deal. So if you're in pain, what do you got to lose? Try a cleanse, try an elimination diet, and I don't mean a subsist on water for 30 days cleanse.
No, please.
No. So on that note, what can people do at home so that they're doing it in a way that's safe but also fruitful, useful for them?
Sure. So, I think that from a nutrition perspective, doing an elimination and challenge diet is an easy, inexpensive way to start to get to the bottom of how the food you're eating is affecting your body. So what you want to do is you want to eliminate those big five, right? Dairy, gluten, corn, soy, and egg. You want to eliminate them for at least 3 weeks. And if you are so inclined, I would also recommend pulling out sugar and sweeteners. There are things on the market now, like if you really love to bake, let's say, and you really feel like you simply can't live for 3 weeks without it, you can use things like date sugar or coconut sugar, because that's just a fruit dehydrated into sugar, and you can certainly have fruit. But really avoiding as much of the sweeteners as you possibly can, avoiding alcohol, caffeine, and certainly eliminating red meat for about 3 weeks. And then you want to reintroduce your foods one at a time. The challenge part of an elimination and challenge diet is just as important as the elimination. So you don't want to do that for 3 weeks and then break it with a beer and a burger, because if you feel terrible, you won't know what it did. So because there seems to be about a 72-hour window in how long it can take for delayed food allergies or food sensitivities to sometimes manifest symptoms, you want to reintroduce one food at a time every 3 days. So for instance, it doesn't matter the order, you decide what you're just ready to reintroduce, and you reintroduce it. You want to eat it at least twice a day for 3 days. And if you still feel as good as you felt, the same as you felt when you were on the elimination, then you move on to the next food. If any old or new symptoms come up, you want to stop. You want to wait for the symptoms to dissipate. And then if you're up for it, you want to reintroduce that same food a second time. Because, stuff happens. Flukes happen. You want to make sure. And then if you get that same response again, I would recommend eliminating that food for another 30 days or so before you try to reintroduce. And then again, waiting to go back to baseline, because now you have a baseline. and then you reintroduce the next food. So the challenge part can actually be slow going sometimes,
Yeah.
especially for folks who are sensitive, but it's the most important part because that's where you mine the data that you just spent 3 weeks creating. So the elimination and challenge diet, I think, is a really important place to start. Now that's very simple. Under the category of shameless self-promotion, I do have a program I created with a chef because what I found is, what I basically just said to you, I have in this lovely little handout that I hand to all my patients in my office. And a certain amount of people can take that and go home and do it. But a lot of people really need support and structure to do it successfully. So Cleanse Organic was created to offer that. So there's coaching, there's recipes, there's meal plans, there's shopping lists. The food is amazing, which, I'm a big foodie. If it doesn't taste good, I'm not going to eat it for very long. And, look, if you want to lose weight, if you want to be out of pain, whatever it is, whatever you do to get there, you have to be willing to keep doing to stay there. So it better be good.
You better change up the lifestyle in a way that's sustainable.
Exactly. So, the food is wonderful, and there's just a ton of support and a real structure to follow to kind of hold your hand through the whole thing. So, my program certainly isn't the only program like that exists. Ours is Cleanse Organic, and so that's something that you can pay for. It's a $295 program online. It also includes some supplements because I do think there are some things minimally that you can do when you're cleansing, like supporting the liver, basic probiotic support for the gut. You want to make sure, whether you're doing an elimination challenge diet in a program like mine or on your own with the simple instructions I gave, something you really want to be careful about is making sure you continue to get enough protein. A lot of times when we cut out eggs, we cut out dairy, we cut out red meat, and the protein just goes away, and then we feel terrible over the course of the elimination. So you may want to get a protein smoothie, like a hemp protein or a rice protein, so that you can be making smoothies once or even twice a day, because you really want to be making sure you're getting adequate protein. You said we're not talking about a water fast here, right? The protein is going to help your body detoxify properly because the amino acids in the protein actually run your liver's detox pathways. But it's also going to make you have stable energy. It's going to make you not be horrific to your children and your partner and your people at work. It's just going to help you have energy and function. And it's going to make it so that if you do lose weight, you lose the right kind of weight. I mean, if you're not getting protein and your body needs amino acids to detox, it's going to take the amino acids from your muscle tissue. And then you're losing muscle mass thinking, woohoo, I'm losing weight. And it's not what you want to lose. So protein's super important. I also think that fish oil is really important. Fish oil is just probably the most potent natural anti-inflammatory you can get your hands on. So if there's something people can do that's easy, it might be some fish oil along with an elimination and challenge diet.
Yeah. Swap out the Advil for the fish oil.
If you can. If you can. Not everybody can. But, when you talk about kind of an inflammatory environment that gets set up in the body, that the body perpetuates with stress and poor diet and chronic pain, for instance. If you start to take some fish oil every day, you're going to actually start to change that inflammatory environment in the body right away while you're making dietary changes and lifestyle changes and getting body work and working on your psycho-spiritual, emotional stuff that's contributing to your pain and all of those things too. You can start to actually get some action right away.
Yeah. Fantastic. And your website, is it just cleanseorganic.com?
It's cleanseorganic.com, yeah. And there's a package on there for, there's a regular cleanse, and then there's also a couples package. So if you're, with your partner, you want to do it together, it gives you a bit of a discount to use some of the materials together, which is nice because it's fun to not do it by yourself.
Yeah. You have to be alone in the household doing it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a real process, but I mean, the changes, particularly in the arena of pain, are just profound. I mean, I think we somehow food has become alternative medicine, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
But I think we forget that, what we put in our mouth is probably the way in which we have the most control over our health and the ability to make the most impact. And we forget, and we don't cook, we don't read labels, we're just go routine. One of the, I think, most successful, sustainable things about doing an elimination challenge diet or doing a cleanse like Cleanse Organic is that you get back to cooking, you get back to reading your labels, you get really conscious again about what you're eating and what you're putting in your mouth. And it's really empowering because it makes a big change and it allows us to take some more responsibility for our health and how we're feeling and get a little bit more control back. So it can be
Right.
great that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage people to fight back against the white noise syndrome, where you just feel like crap, but not so bad that you're debilitated. And so you just put it on the back burner and live that way. And a lot of people will hear like you have to eliminate all this stuff, including like people's favorite stuff like sugar, alcohol. Um, but it profoundly changes your life when you remove the constant grating agitation
Yeah.
in the background of your life. Like you're saying, like the way you treat your partner and your children, the way you show up for work,
Yeah.
the way you feel when you go out on a hike. Like a lot of people can kind of poo-poo it, but it's not small. It changes the whole way that you show up for your life.
It
Kind of a big
does.
deal.
It does. And we are so willing to accept like the terrible mediocrity, and I mean, so many of my patients come in and they're like, I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm bloated, and I don't know, maybe it's just part of getting older, and I'm like, no, don't believe the hype. Like, you can feel amazing. It doesn't matter what age you are. And the thing about the food, yeah, you have to pull all your favorite stuff. You get to reintroduce it back in.
Mhm.
Chances are you're not going to react to all of them. And either
Right.
way, you can make choices. It's like, okay, I drink wine at night. I have sniffles in the morning. I have allergies in the morning. Does that mean I never have wine again at night? That's up to me. But at least
Yeah.
I understand what it's doing in my body, and I get to make that choice.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us. I really appreciate your perspective, the food perspective, on pain and just plain old living happily in our physical bodies.
Well, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Have a great day.
Okay.